Hi, I'm Liz with D'Addario, and I am here with Taylor Morris, violinist, fiddler, and educator. And today he's going to give us a lesson on rosin.
Yeah, so rosin originally is sap from a pine tree, which is a material called resin. Today, when we make rosin, it's usually a combination of resin with some other materials like beeswax. And usually rosin comes in a circular form, or it might come in a rectangle, and we call these cakes. So you have a cake, we have some cakes of rosin here. And another important thing to know is that if you're someone who has allergies to trees and you might be allergic to the material in rosin, there are also synthetic versions of rosin so that you don't have any problems with that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So when you have the rosin cake in front of you
Yeah.
and you add that to the bow, and we'll talk about how that works, what is going on? Like, why does rosin do what it does?
Yeah, so bow hair by itself is actually pretty smooth. And the sound on an instrument is created when we take the bow hair and we use it to grip the strings, and then when you pull the bow across the strings, it's the sound of the string snapping back into place while it's being gripped that actually creates the pitch. So if you have very, very smooth bow hair and you try to pull the bow across the strings, it's going to give you a really fluffy tone. So once you rosin the bow, that allows the bow to grip the string so that when you pull the bow across the strings, we get a very clear tone.
Okay. When you are pulling the bow across the string with rosin on it,
Yeah.
what's actually going on?
Yeah, so this is actually a bit of a science lesson. Go ahead and put your hands together for me, and now rub them together. And you notice that your hands are heating up because of
Yeah.
friction.
Yeah.
So when you take the bow and you pull it across the strings, there's friction that's created from the rubbing of the bow hair on the string. And the heat that's produced from that friction temporarily melts the rosin so that it's stickier and that it grips to the string. And something that's important to know about the stickiness of rosin is that there are actually different types of rosin. So rosin sort of exists on a spectrum. On one end we have lighter rosin, and on the other end we have darker rosin. And then bass players have a whole other type of rosin that's incredibly sticky. So you should only buy bass rosin if you're a bass player. If you put bass rosin on a violin bow and you try to pull it across a violin, it's not going to make a pleasant sound.
Well, let's talk about how to put the rosin onto the bow.
Yeah, great. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to make sure that your bow hair is tightened. When you put the rosin on the bow hair, you want to go ahead and do it slowly. You want to make sure that you're not hitting the frog and tripping the rosin. And you also want to make sure that when you pull the bow across the rosin that you're using the rosin on all of the bow hairs. So you want to make probably 3 or 4 passes across the bow. You don't need to put on a lot of rosin, you just need as much as you need to make a clear sound. So if you feel like your sound is really fluffy and thin, you might need a bit more rosin. If you feel like your sound is pretty gritty, you probably have on too much rosin. You might not need to rosin the next day when you play your instrument.
And before we go, do you have any other tips and tricks for us?
Yeah, so a few things to know about rosin. When you first get rosin, it's going to look like this. It's pretty shiny. And then as you start to use the rosin, that shininess is going to go away, and you're going to be able to access that rosin a little bit better. So know that when you first get it and it looks like this, that's totally fine. Don't scratch it before you use it the very first time. That can create jagged surfaces in the rosin, and that can break bow hairs. So just use it like you normally would. You might need to use it a little bit longer to sort of really get the rosin ready to go, but you don't need to do anything extra to it. Something else to know about rosin is that rosin is pretty fragile. So if you drop it, it's going to shatter, and it's going to make a big mess, and it's going to be really sticky, and you don't want to deal with that. So if you've got a case, go ahead and close that case when you're done using your rosin. If your rosin looks like this, usually it comes in a box, go ahead and put it back in the box. If your rosin comes with a cloth wrapper around it, go ahead and wrap that rosin up so that it's safe. The last and probably most important thing about using rosin is that at the end of the day, when you're done practicing and you're putting your instrument away, you want to make sure that you go ahead and take a clean cloth to wipe down the strings, wipe down the fingerboard to prevent rosin from building up on the strings. If that rosin cakes up over time, it can interfere with the way that the string is supposed to vibrate, and that means that your string is not necessarily going to last as long. So cleaner strings is going to leave you with a cleaner sound and strings that last a bit longer.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks so much, Taylor.
Thank you.